three, go. Welcome to the Sales Prospector Show, supported by Lease A Sales Rep and Inc. 5000 company, helping our clients grow sales by securing guaranteed appointments, qualified leads, and guaranteed contracts for their services and products across the U.S. I'm your host, Gil Pagan. You can also find us at leaseasalesrep.com, and we are on all the major social media channels. Just search for us at Lease A Sales Rep, and we will pop up in your screen. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Simon Lamey, who is the founder of The Brain Wheel, and he is the chief brain of The Brain Wheel. He's located in London, and he has a growing presence in the U.S. with U.S. customers. And he's experienced marketing guy, consultancy guy, agency guy, and he's going to share a little bit about his background and what the Brain Wheel does. And we're going to get into a real good question and answer period here with him. Welcome, Simon, to the show.
Gil, thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be speaking to you from across the pond as well. So you can probably see in the background, it's evening time here, and I know it's lunchtime with you. So really good to be doing it.
That's right. No, I'm glad that you could be with us. And tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to start the Brain Wheel, and you became the chief brain. There was a cartoon series called Pinky and the Brain. And okay, I don't know if they have it over there in London across the pond. You're nodding yes. Okay.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
Right. So you're the brain, I guess. I'm not sure if there's an association there, but anyway, go ahead and tell us how you started it and your background, and then we'll go from there.
Of course, definitely. So yeah, I mean, the chief brain, it was quite a journey to get here. So I spent about 14 years working in marketing. So working in marketing agencies, so like Saatchi & Saatchi was my very first place where I started. So really big place to start, really good place to cut your teeth. And then I got heavily into things like strategy and insight and customers and understanding them and building really big campaigns for some of the world's very big brands, from like Honda, worked on Coca-Cola, social media work, digital work, lots of content work, quite a varied background, and I got deeply into sort of things like marketing science and really robust sort of case studies looking at hundreds of brands across the world. And you really get a nice picture of what works and what doesn't. And so I had a change of circumstance. So we've got, it's challenging working up in London because of the hours. And, I didn't get to see my family so much. So we had a big shift in lifestyle. And there's a huge pressure as well, because I felt that I wanted to, there's an awful lot of internet marketing advice that is terrific. There's some really good few people out there. But what really shocked me was when I went out on my own was that the standard of marketing advice in some places is highly questionable. And it was really at odds with this sort of real rigor that I'd got over 14 years. So I suddenly felt kind of this big surge to kind of right a lot of wrongs. Mm-hmm. And so it was a real impetus, not just to kind of have a business where I could be around my family more, but actually I just want to do something really good and to really help medium-sized and small businesses in particular, and startups, and give them like the advice from what I know really works, not just one-off case studies and finger in the air type thinking. So yeah, that was a really big thing for me to do. So, and it's going very well actually. So yeah.
Well, good for you. And so when you were looking at marketing gurus, if you will, or marketing agencies or consultants, and a lot of them have a very similar approach to lead generation or strategy or what have you, I guess. So share a little bit about what you saw in the marketplace, obviously from your agency experience, and then you went into your own business, and kind of how you're like disrupting the market, if you will, with your kind of approach.
Of course. I think that the one thing that really is quite different from the world I came from is that you have an awful lot of time dedicated to building trust in people's brains. And so, you know, you can do big billboards and TV ads and YouTube videos and things like that. And that is good to a point. Often it can be fluffy and not really lead to leads. And I'm very aware that marketing versus sales, there's a huge debate there, and quite rightly so. You know, sales guys have, you know.
Yeah, let me interrupt you for a little bit for our listeners. There's always this big, and you kind of hit a very good point there, Simon. Very good point about marketing and sales, right? That people kind of blend those two terms together, and there's kind of a lot of gray. But for us, and you can correct me if you agree, or correct me if if you don't agree, marketing is lead gen, right? Branding, all that. Sales is when that lead that comes into us, and we start talking to that customer to try to close the deal. So we're right. That's kind of, so marketing is lead gen, branding, name recognition, and sales are, you know, we're talking to the guy and the gal, we're closing them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, you agree?
That's it. Mate, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Right.
And yeah, actually, just to go off on a small tangent, but it's really relevant, is that, you know, I've worked on big marketing brands for a huge online software company, a big global piece, and we spent like hours and days and weeks coming up with, well, the team I inherited did, with lots of content, you know, white papers to drive leads to the sales team. And I got on this big call I was 2 weeks into the job, and I was inheriting like, I don't know, 10 months worth of work. And the one guy on the call said, "You haven't driven any leads to us. You put nice flashy ads up. You've written white papers. We've got very questionable names. And all the leads we get, we have to find in our local market ourselves as well." So I fully appreciate that. Actually, coming from, now I'm working for small businesses and startups and some medium-sized businesses, there's a real pressure and an important pressure to try and drive leads. And for me, the most important thing is actually getting that trust in customers' minds first of all. And I know trust is kind of an obvious word to say, but when you unpick into the neuroscience about how people's brains work, there's the prefrontal cortex right at the front of your brain. It's almost like a switch that turns off if somebody feels they're being sold to straight away. And it's really, really interesting. So when I was first starting out and looking at a lot of these sort of internet gurus, going back to what you were saying earlier, it was buy now, buy my ClickFunnels Facebook advertising course and you'll be a millionaire tomorrow stuff. And I think the only customers you really get when you do that are the ones who are really desperate, or the ones who are going to cause you an awful lot of problems. And so there was no filter to actually work out who are the decent leads to get. So from a business owner's point of view, I'm thinking this would be an awful way to get clients. I think I would not like to have the clients who click the buy now button after seeing one video, because they're going to be really difficult to work with. And, you know, they're going to be desperate and they're going to make a lot of complaints. But actually what I've come to learn is that you have to have a filter. You know, you've got to wheedle out the bad ones. you've got to find the good ones. And that's why I think pre-questionnaires before you get any leads and trying to convert them into sales, like, it's such an important step.
That's a good point. Good point. You raised that person who goes onto your site. Let's say if you're doing e-commerce and they're buying that $9.97 or $97.47, these funny numbers that happen to be consistent across the web, right? And they click on it right away, seeing one video. It's like an impulse buy, right? You're at shopping, you're at Walmart. Well, I'm talking about the U.S. now. Or you're at a Lidl, maybe over there where you are, you know, and you see the chocolate bar, you buy the chocolate bar because it's right in front of you, and realize you didn't really want it, but you bought it. So a very similar situation here. It's an impulse buy, and you're talking about building trust with your service, your agency, your platform, and we had this conversation about trust, right? Many smaller businesses and to some extent middle market companies, not so much. They don't want to extend the process of building trust because they want leads, okay? And they want to talk to somebody who they want to pitch and be able to close the customer. So in our conversation before, we talked about trust, and trust can take, depending upon who you're talking to, a long time. And, you know, and from our perspective, as I shared, we want to get a customer talking to us, or we're talking to them, and we want to qualify them. We want to see if they got the money and the budget, that they're the decision maker, and we want to move them to close and get them into some kind of sales process, right? And that trust word, and I know where you're coming from, your approach, but can you explain, trust means how much time? Is that like a week, or is that like 6 months?
Yeah, of course. Well, the best way to describe it is there's a wonderful piece of research that was done about 2013 in Europe, and it looked at something like 700 different businesses across the world, and it looked at how they converted into sales and how they built trust. And this has really played out in practice really nicely for me. So that if you just chase sales, I know you get this sort of up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, make a sale every month. And your business is going, but it never hugely grows. But if you invest in trust, after about, say, 6 months to a year, you start to convert on that trust. It won't be immediate, but eventually, after 1 to 3 years, you really start to cash in on that trust. So when you ask to make a sale, it's so much quicker to make it. So those leads convert quicker. But if you just keep doing sales, short-term, buy now, promotional messages, you don't build a brand. And if you don't build a brand, it means you haven't got long-term trust built. So it's kind of like, do you buy something today? If you got $10, do you invest $5 in it to buying something today to keep you alive? And then do you invest the other $5 to actually accrue interest, and you get that money back in 1 to 3 years' time? It's exactly the same with trust. You build the trust. After a year to 3 years, you really start to cash it in, and it's so much quicker to make a sale when you've got that. So that's why top of the funnel stuff. Excuse me if I'm talking any jargon here, but
right.
The top of the funnel stuff like at the moment, PR and online video is particularly powerful, as well as obviously podcasts and things like that, just to grow awareness, just so people can kind of get you. And I think live streaming video as well is very important, because you get to know that person very quickly. But after a while, all that comes quite frustrating, because you've got to hit sales targets. So you've got to have a way to try and lead people through to it might be a list they sign up to, and you get the obvious white papers you might download as well. But yeah, for me, it's really important that top of the funnel stuff's quickly got to lead into the middle of the funnel, where you can start to convert people into like a warm and a hot leads from there. But yeah, it's the numbers here.
So to be more practical or more tactical.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to explain this a little bit to make sure I understand it. Be more tactical rather. So long-term trust building. So you end up doing the short-term sale, and you're always kind of going up and down in revenue. Short-term, long-term trust building is, again, I'm just using my words. It's a video, a blog post, a podcast. You're out there with this information that ideally people are finding, right? And we're obviously in your marketing channels, whatever that is, and obviously you have good SEO. You're on LinkedIn, you're on Facebook. So there's people out there watching you, they hear this stuff, but then you get the other side of the business, which is the one that is trying to generate inbound leads, right? That are more hotter, if you will. And you're kind of doing those in tandem. So you're doing the long-term trust building, subject matter expert, kind of like you, like let's say the brain wheel, and then you're doing the lead gen, let's say by email marketing. You're doing other stuff with giving you more hot leads regularly. You're kind of doing them both. Did I get it right, or did I miss something?
You're absolutely bang on. You're absolutely bang on. That's it. So I think the best in terms of tactics for building trust, I find that especially for B2B stuff, I mean, things like this, like podcasts, for example, are really, really important things, because sure, people might not buy from you today, but when they want to come to buy, you'll be more top of mind as well. So that means they'll move down to the funnel, maybe not today, but maybe in 6 months to a year's time. As long as you keep repeatedly doing great podcasts like this, for example, you're kind of always there in their head. So when they come to buy, they're ready to do it. But there's always got to be, I think it's really important to have some embedded call to action actually in what you do. So for example, podcast today, you listen to any other podcast, I think it's really important to say, what you do. You could even mention your email address, your website. You might casually mention the things you sell, right? So I'll do an overt embedded sell, right? They say, and I do one-to-one consultancy, I do email consultancy, and I write books. Okay, so that's probably it. anything more is too much than a sell. But if you put the embedded sell in there, you've wrapped your message into a big trust above the top of the funnel thing. And then hopefully, obviously people click through to your site, they sign up to your sales page, to your list, to your email newsletter. And then, as you say, exactly the short-term sales tactics like email, targeted Facebook ads, for example, work particularly well for B2B. Display online, all the short-term stuff that just drives immediate traffic. And, the short-term stuff is wonderful because you can measure it. But the problem is, just because you can measure it and you can see the direct traffic doesn't actually mean you're growing a business. It doesn't mean you're growing a brand. And the problem when you're trying to build trust is it's really hard to measure, right? So a podcast, like what's the value of a podcast going out? It's very hard to measure when you're going to get this return on your investment. And actually, it's probably going to be 1 to 3 years time. And the only people who can genuinely afford it are the Walmarts of this world. And I've worked with friends who actually do this as their job. They're called econometricians.
Oh,
And
really?
they cost they're very clever guys, and they will measure where how well you're at your active, your brand trust, your brand stuff like podcasts or TV or your press and outdoor is actually working, and when you actually get that return. And it costs tens, hundreds of thousands at times to do so. But for the smaller business, the ones who are more budget conscious, I'm afraid it is about faith. But I tell you what, if you don't do it, you really know, because you're just chasing the same numbers week in, week out, month in, month out, and not really growing a business or a brand. So doing it is good, but it's just very hard to measure versus the short-term stuff.
Yeah, no, I gotcha. And when it comes to the actual tactical, lead gen that a lot of businesses want, what we tell or we suggest to companies is that, and we also do it ourselves, that if we are talking to a customer who for some reason is not ready to buy, even though they reached out to us, because they don't have, let's say, the capital at the time, or for whatever reason they may say it's something else, but at the end of the day it's capital. We add them to our email list, right? And we blast out emails maybe once a month, sometimes twice a month, with content, sales content, with offer, let's say an offer maybe once a quarter, and then we'll stay in their inbox. And we get people reaching out to us 3 years later, 4 years later, and we look at our CRM and we see when was the last time we had a conversation. It was 4 years ago, and we totally forgot about them. Clearly, we made the multiple contacts, but didn't work out, and we put them in our funnel to our email marketing, and that's very tactical. And again, you're building a business, you're building a brand. If you're on the startup side, right? So we do this regularly for ourselves as well. So that's real life experience. When you, I guess, when you're that report that you talked about, that was in 2013, that was overseas, right? Talked about building trust and buyers and how people buy, I guess, in London or the UK, right? Europe. That's a lot different than the way people buy over here. Okay. So help me, or help obviously me to understand, and also the audience understand the buyer persona in Europe versus the buyer persona here. I got my, and we talked about this as well. I have personal experience, and we have internal data on this. Difference between a buyer in London or in the UK and a buyer in the US. So I'll let you go first.
Of course, I think that's a really that's a very, very good question, because there's a lot of truth. There's enormous amounts of truth in it, right? Because the European buyer is quite different. So I've got I was working on a project a few months ago where a huge big gaming streaming brand wanted to launch in Europe, and they're American. I can't really say the name, but it doesn't take too much guessing to work out, right? And the big problem is that in Europe, that if you're trying to sell to Europeans, if you're trying to sell tickets to this event, for example, or you're trying to sell to Europeans, the buy now, buy now, buy now type approach, or the heavy selling thing, just really switches people off. It's a really big issue. But in the States, you guys are far more relaxed, and it's wonderful. I think it's part of your culture, which is really good, is that, you know, you're very open and very welcoming to sales pitches, and you'll talk to somebody about it. And then if you don't want to buy, you'll just say, I don't want to buy. But in Europe, there's this sort of, you feel like you're slightly attacked almost, or it's like it's slightly intrusive into your world. And so, if anything, I'd say you almost need to do the softly trust building stuff for a bit longer with Europeans, and only when they give you their consent do you say go in with your sales stuff. So, you know, we've had GDPR. Have you heard of GDPR?
No, what is that?
Right, so this was huge, right? So this is really good. Hopefully, you know, for your US audience, especially if you're trading abroad in Europe, is that there's this huge, there's this big campaign about privacy and data and information, and companies, small, medium, large, have been collecting email addresses and tracking people without their consent for a long time. They've given people really poor opt-in boxes, so they've tricked them with a way they've written a way to opt in for an email campaign, and they didn't realize they were there. Their data was being sold across the board, and they never consented for it. So what's happened is that there's a huge European law. You can get fined something like 2 to 4% of, I think it's about 2 to 4% of your total revenue for the year, as a fine if you can't show the European government or your local government, the GDPR body in Europe, that the data you have has been collected with complete, clear consent, and that involves tracking people on websites too. So this has caused a lot of issues, and one company, a fashion retailer, I think it was, went under pretty quickly. So you had to just jettison and get rid of your whole email list if you've got that list through dodgy affairs. So, you know, that's a really good example of how Europeans really are quite, they don't like being sold to, they don't like being tracked too much. And I think it's a big cultural difference. I mean, it's great in the States that you guys you seem to be far more open. You know, I lived in Missouri for 7 months, believe it or not. And I appreciate that it's nice how open you are to having these sales conversations. If you're just not interested, you just say, I'm not interested, and everyone's happy. It's slightly different over here.
Yeah, Missouri, it's called Missouri.
Right,
the show me state. Okay.
Yes.
I don't believe anything. Show me. Okay, that's what it was. So yes, it's interesting that European buyers do not want to be sold to. They want to be a buy when they're ready to buy, right? And versus the U.S. Buyer or the U.S. Consumer business has, they may not like the pushy salesperson and all that. We get it, but they are more accustomed to being sold to. And being basically asked questions directly to about their interest and their qualifications in a different kind of way to determine whether we're the right fit or the product is the right fit. It's a lot different. Now, the challenge is companies that are overseas in Europe coming here to the U.S. wanting to engage with businesses and vendors in the U.S. We engage with them in a U.S. mentality, saying, you want to come into our market, you want us to help, help you grow your company, what have you. They are still operating in the European mindset. And we're talking to them in the U.S. mindset. Like, this is the cost. When is your timeline? Who else is involved in the decision making? When will you get back to us? Then the response is, we'll review and reflect, and we'll talk about it internally. You try to get them into a box, and they don't want to commit. So we have to suggest to them that this is the next point of contact, and they tend not to like that. But then they forget they're coming into our market. Yeah. So our market operates differently. Now, if I'm going to sell into Europe, I need to be aware that that's the way Europeans make decisions. So it's interesting because our sales approach here could rub a lot of Europeans the wrong way
Mm,
because they're waiting to be, what I would call coddled. Okay.
mm,
When you're ready, when the baby wants to burp. Okay. And,
yeah,
all that kind of business, change the diaper.
mm,
So that's kind of the way I see it in our experience. Then.
mm. I think you've really hit on something, because what really strikes us over here is that the customer, you have such a great history of customer service over in the States. I mean, you go into a restaurant in the States, you sit down, you have a burger and fries or something, but the service is impeccable. I mean, it's so good. I mean, over here we have been slowly catching up with that, but I think when you try to come to when you're thinking of buying something over, at least over in Europe, there isn't that expectation that the service you get once you bought it is actually going to be good. So you're going to be more resistant to wanting to buy it. But maybe it is in the States that actually customer service has always been fantastic. That's the perception anyway, that customer service in the States is really strong, and you do anything to help them once they bought it as well. And I think that makes you more open to have a sales conversation when somebody's trying to sell, because you think actually they're still going to be there anyway once I bought it. So I think there's a big cultural difference there.
No, absolutely. Can you share a little bit, Simon, about, I guess, an example of your approach, I guess, your support, assistance, consulting services with a client that kind of use some of your strategy to help them get more leads, build trust, whatever that is. Again, you don't have to say the client's name, but just general, maybe the industry, but just to give us an idea of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, of course. No, that's a really good idea. So this is all going to be very, very European
Sure.
focused. So so for example, there's a big, I'm trying to think. So startup guy I'm working with at the moment, right? He's very, very good, great brand. It's to do with the travel sector at the moment. So in terms of getting leads for this guy, it's it's an editorial thing. So you go to the website, you come along and you visit. And when you're actually on the site, what you want to do is you want to convert those people into, I suppose, third party. Basically, you get paid for visiting the site and sending to a third party link as well. So actually, the goal to actually get those leads is actually it's quite a simple tactic. It's a lot of Facebook advertising, for example. So what you really need, I think Facebook advertising is very strong. It's very good for direct response, and especially if you're doing editorial work. I mean, Facebook works incredibly well for that, and I know the algorithm's been changing, but it's still performing. So targeted Facebook advertising campaigns based on interest and also age groups as well, because there's clients of mine who also has it's not just sort of typical demographics, it's a psychographic thing as well. So that means things like attitudes, and you can target by attitudes, things they're into, like alternative travel, for example. And actually sending people to that site via Facebook advertising is a really nice way of doing it. So that's a very quick tactic. The other one is, of course, by podcasts like this as well, that goes out into the ether, and you can clearly direct traffic that way. That's a really nice brand sort of trust building thing, something that Facebook advertising doesn't do so well, and actually driving to that site. And when they're on that site, there's of course a journey they need to take in order to click on that link and in order to get paid as well. So once they've done that, that's clearly about getting your pages right optimization, right keywords, but more importantly, making sure there aren't too many clicks to get to their search result they want. And when they click on that, then the client of mine gets paid, for example, which is nice. So podcasts and Facebook advertising, very strong, but also PR. One, I know it sounds daft, but PR might sound a bit old school to some people, but if you do great, so you've got a really nice unconventional idea, like my client has. I can't really reveal too much about him for a few sensitive reasons, but the idea is that he's got an unconventional idea about how to search for travel sites. We have a beer brand over here, for example, who wanted to stand up against mass market beers, and they had a great PR story, which was about it's the smallest protest in the world, because they were a small brewery, and they stood outside the big mass breweries with a placard saying the smallest protest in the world. And that's all free. You just pay somebody I think who's a dwarf. You go outside, you hold the placard, and then you get a lot of PR. But that's really, really powerful, because the coverage and the reach you get to the customers you need to get is very, very strong. So PR, Facebook advertising in particular, very good, and things like podcasts are nice. And I like one more tactic, which he isn't doing, but I would recommend to people, is that online video. I know online video has been going around for a while, but actually doing really strong, emotionally fueled online videos that talk about the customer's world. And I know it sounds a bit vague, but Ariel do a very good job. They've done a very good job in India talking about how it's the father's role to take responsibility for the washing. And actually, little videos like that don't need to cost companies too much to make can really drive people as well to your site as well. So that's a really nice way to do it. But going back to my client with a travel website as well, you have things like it's B2B marketing because you need to get partners on board. And I think there's of course one-to-one meetings are good, but actually direct events, live events are, I think, really important, especially over here with trust, because you get to see people in the flesh. Mm-hmm. You can organize them, and online's really busy. Online is a really busy place as well, and especially if you're doing B2B trust, where you're trying to get partners on board to send people, to build affiliates with and partnerships with, where you can share revenue. Actually having live events as well, where you can then funnel people from that event into a list that they tick and agree to be on, is a really nice way of doing things. And then you can go in for the one-to-one meeting to close it. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your question. But but there are definitely some good B2C ways and good B2B ways to actually drive things.
No, absolutely, yeah. You said some Facebook advertising to drive traffic to a website or to a landing page, an affiliate kind of website. You said some video, doing some passion video. You said PR, doing some PR as well, and kind of helping
really important.
That, to drive traffic, interest. It's all the brand building and trust and getting your name out there. My experience, at least, and what I've heard from people regarding Facebook advertising in general, that it is good for certain things. It is good for a direct-to-consumer sale. To some extent, it's good for B2B. But what I've heard, and also what we've experienced, is that the larger the ticket item, the harder it is to get sales from it. And because, not that a decision maker, let's say a COO or a VP of finance, is not on Facebook, because you can target them that way. They're on there. But, are they on there looking to buy something that you're selling for 20 grand? So, I guess, I don't know what your experience is or your feedback on that is, but that's what we've experienced, and also other companies have told us the same thing. You want a direct-to-consumer sale? Facebook. You want a small B2B sale? Small, whatever that means, 1,000, maybe 800, 900, maybe 1,500. Maybe you can get some sales there, but you start going up at that 9, 10, 12, 15. It doesn't now. It's good for branding, name recognition. They'll see your name. You may track them somewhere else through remarketing, right? Get to LinkedIn or something. The name will come up again, right? So you're kind of branding if you're looking for a bigger sale. But do you want to spend money on Facebook to not generate the lead and the sale, to do branding? So I just gave you a lot there. Go ahead.
No, you've said some really good stuff there, in my opinion, because with Facebook advertising, I'm a B2B guy. All I actually want, I don't want thousands. I just want 50 clients.
Right. That's right.
I'm a group consulting guy. I like smaller numbers. It makes me happy. You can do something with a lot of meaning then as well. So I've done some Facebook advertising right from the start. I can't, obviously not going to swear, but you get the worst, email signups from Facebook. There's no qualifying. They don't know who you are. You don't know who they are. And they're the people who, I think, out of the ones I've had sign up to my newsletter, I don't really get many unsubscribes, which is really good. But the ones I do get from have actually been Facebook advertising, more than not, and I just don't like it. I don't like it. LinkedIn, I'm a huge fan of. I think it's very strong. The advertising on LinkedIn costs more. It is a more expensive way to do it. The quality of leads you get, right? But I think it's worth it. You know, I think the most funny enough, I have worked in. I was working with a printing business, actually, well, on behalf of a last printing business last year, and for reasons, confidentiality reasons, I can't say the name, but they were big and they're a household name. There are some there's one really nice tool online it's called Cyance, Cyance. And what's really nice about this is you can target, when somebody from a business, say you're trying to target, is searching for your product, you can actually find out who is searching from your business, for your product based on the keyword they're searching for, and you can actually find out which business it is. You can't find out their name, but you can find out the business they're from. And Cyance is a really nice way of predicting where your next sale is going to come from. And I've used it before. It's a really nice piece of software. And not only you can see also how often, how frequently that keyword, which hopefully is your product name, is coming from that business as well. So you can see if it's been searched for, say you have a product like big printers, or Simon Lamey brainwheel printers or something like that, and somebody's been searching for that, you can then see which business that's come from, and you can see how frequently they've done it. So it's been 5 times, 10 times in the last month, and you can see how warm those leads are likely to be. And that's really nice because that takes you one step further to it. Does it tell you the name of the person in that business? It doesn't. Does it tell you whether they were just searching because they were bored over lunchtime whilst having a sandwich, or does it tell you they're really interested in buying from you? It doesn't. But it does take you one step closer. So I'm liking the way this is going, but for me, talking to somebody one-to-one for B2B stuff, nothing beats that still. Human-to-human stuff, nothing beats that for me.
So you're saying Cyance, Cyance.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that
exactly.
tool, just to summarize what you said, in that tool, if someone is searching for IBM computers or Dell computers, you put that term into Cyance, and then when do you have to actually have the name of the company that's searching for Dell? So I'm a sales guy at Dell Computers, and I want to know everybody who's searching on Google for Dell computers. Do I have to? Will it give me that information, or do I got to put a company name? Let's say it's Lenovo.
Yeah.
Let's say it's Red Hat. Red Hat is searching for Dell computers. Do I got to put Red Hat into Cyance, or just Dell computers?
Sure. So you've got to put both in. Yeah, you got to put Red Hat and Dell computers, because what they'll do is they'll match the keyword with the IP address, the web address.
Got it. Right. So you have to identify. So you got to do some work here. You got to identify companies that you would like to have, in theory, as potential customers, and then see if and populate that platform with those company names and and terms, I guess, and see if they will pop up on your feed. And is it a I'm sure they have free and pro and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't even think they've got don't think they've got a freemium approach. It's actually, you've got to talk to a sales guy and get a demo done as well. It's not quite like a Crazy Egg style thing. It's a bit less free than that. But I mean, the way the process works, it is an involved process, because what you have to do is you get, say with Cyance, for example, you'll get something like for your fee, you might get 100 keywords, search terms that you can look for. And you give these guys, the list of terms, and they could be product names, they could be top of the funnel terms, just like computers or personal computers. And then you give them this list, and you've got to be really selective about this list. And this list has got to have top of the funnel stuff, middle of the funnel stuff, and bottom of the funnel, I'm going to buy now stuff as well. And you've got to split it according to what your targets and what your business goals are. And then what you then do is you then give them the target list of accounts or businesses that you actually want to reach as well. And then they will put that through their software, and then you'll see which of these businesses are matching up for those terms. There is some guesswork as well. Are you choosing the right search terms to give them as well? Are you inputting the right search terms as well to match up to that business? Because they could be searching under something slightly different. So it does require a bit of labor and a bit of time, but the results, it can really tell you who is looking from within a company. So yeah, I think it's.
Absolutely. No, yeah, no, sounds good. So we'll put that in the show notes.
Mm,
Science as a platform to look at for our
mm.
listeners. Um, what are your thoughts on, I guess, and other marketing tools that you either know of, have tried, like the HubSpots of the world, the Marketos, of
Mhm.
the world that track people who come to your site, and after I guess you got them in an email platform, then it's tracking them coming back, those kind of things. What are your thoughts on, marketing tools and ones that you should have people look at and recommend, and just what your knowledge is?
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, in terms of those sort of the Marketos type tools, I've got away with being able to give them to someone else, but of course, clearly, I know obviously how they work. But one thing that I found particularly useful is way before you get to the sales stage, rather. There's a tool called Global Web Index. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but
Global Web Index.
Global Web Index, really nice, because often when people start out a marketing campaign, they might have been in business for years, or they're just trying to understand who their digital audience actually is and what are the demographics, what are the attitudes. And what these guys do is they run surveys every quarter, every 3 to 6 months, and they give you incredible detail about their likes, their tastes, not just their age or anything like that, their country. So an awful lot of detail. And what you can do is you can build a really decent profile of who your audience is, what they are, where they live, and what media they're going to look at. So if you're selling IBM computers, for example, to C-level, people in companies, you'll be able to tell which percentage of media is it podcasts they really like? Do they really skew heavily for that? And you'll be able to tell location, you'll be able to tell the interest they're in as well. So what that does is that really helps for things when you get to the targeting stage, say with LinkedIn, or even if you decide to do Facebook advertising, that you can be far more precise. So there's less wastage as well when you go down to when you do targeted advertising. So I'm a big fan of that, and of course it gives you decent personas as well. It gives you people to go to go and talk to. So that's rather nice. Personally, I use Drip for myself as my email software, which I love. I love the flows. Drip email provider.
No, I want to make sure I got this. So you said Global
Yeah,
Web Index is a
yeah,
report. It's a report, right?
yeah. Well, Global Web is actually an online. It's a software. It's an insight software tool in which you can build your audiences as well. So, what that means is you can work out who your audience is and get some real detail about where they are and what they look like and their interests, and go into far more detail than Facebook advertising could give you.
So it's called Global Web Index. Is that a website?
Yeah, it's what it is. It's an online. You get closed access to an online. It's a online software tool where you can actually search through your browser as well and start to build these custom built audiences.
Got it. Okay, so people would go to Google, type in Global Web Index. It'll take them to some page, and then you can start building your audience and getting more information about your audience based on what you enter, and then
Yeah,
that'll guide you to where they are, and then you hopefully will be there with your message, with your blogs, with your videos, with your whatever it is that you'll be in. They're all on LinkedIn, then you want to be on LinkedIn, right? So if they're
yeah,
on YouTube, you want to be on YouTube or whatever. But is that
yeah.
it? Okay.
Exactly, and there's no finger in the air sort of guessing with stuff. You know quite precisely who they are, what they like, and where they go to consume their media and their content as well. And it gives you content preferences and things like that.
Oh,
It's
that's
really
good.
nice.
What
Nice
was the
tool.
one you said before? Your email?
Sure. So I'm using. I don't know if you have it over in the States, but they're really nice. Drip.com.
D is in David, R I P is in Peter.
That's right. That's right.
I like Drip
Um,
Marketing. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. So I use their automation tools actually within Drip, so you can set up your own rules. It's pretty intuitive to use. So for example, a basic one. So somebody comes to my site, they sign up to the newsletter, and I've got a really nice free ebook they get, and then there's a couple of messages that come afterwards to help them understand that ebook. Right.
Oh wow.
So that whole journey, I can plan out and I can see on my screen, and you can set different rules. So if somebody visits the website, then you set a rule to say, send this ebook, and then set a rule to say, send this email campaign, which contains 3 emails that you've set up somewhere else on Drip. And then there's a rule to say exit campaign after that. And then it's really nice piece of software. It's very different to MailChimp, which I used before, but it makes it so much more simple to use. It's visual. It's a lovely, lovely piece of lovely email provider. Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. I appreciate you sharing that. When we talked about LinkedIn before, about LinkedIn marketing, that it's one of the most expensive marketing, right? Microsoft owns them now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were expensive before Microsoft bought them. So I don't know what the cost per lead is. Last time I checked, just a while ago, maybe 2 years ago, it was about $15. You know, give or take per click, if you will. Is last time I checked. Do you remember any of those numbers?
Sure. Actually, I had much higher. I mean, I'm converting dollars to pounds here as well, but I was looking at how much it would cost for me to target startups and small businesses to one of. I wrote a book on Instagram, and I was thinking, should I use LinkedIn to try and promote this book through paid advertising? And actually, it was more like £30, so it's like about $40. You know, for me to actually get some.
Yeah, it's got up significantly. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I just thought it just put me off, and I thought I'm not going to make any money. You know, there's no ROI on this at all. So there's going to have to be another way to promote this. So it was just like double.
Yeah, I agree. And again, talking about, so LinkedIn, extremely targeted B2B audience. And if you can narrow that to a very targeted group of people that is your buyer, right? Let's say VPs of finance or CFOs, let's just say that. Target those CFOs in a particular state. And so now you target, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000 people in the state. Then you throw some dollars on that, and your ticket item is whatever, $20,000, $40,000. Then obviously it's worth investing for the $40. The problem is that they're going the Google model, click $40 versus click, submit a form, contact you. That's worth $40.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Because there are steps after the click, right?
Yeah. So give me $40 for a form completion. I'll pay for that, right? Versus $40 for a click. That's and again, it depends how your ticket. Do you have a five-figure ticket, six-figure ticket? Okay, then obviously it may make sense.
I mean, that's the thing, Gil. I've actually, because I do, I've got my what I call email consultancy product, where it's it's an expensive high ticket thing. It's about $5,000 a year or something like that to get clients, and I still decided to go against LinkedIn advertising. I've decided to go against Facebook advertising for it, because the best results I get is when I'm fun enough, even though I've got a huge background in digital and online, I'm now going offline more and more. So it's actually offline events, which work really nicely for me. They're very powerful things, because even though you don't get many people, you don't get hundreds of people, you get fewer people, but you really make such an impact there, and you get to meet them in the flesh, and you can do some really nice screening there and then without having to necessarily always go through a questionnaire. And that's the way I'm doing it. And finally, I have postcards, right? Can you believe it? We don't get much post.
Sure.
We don't get mail, right? And if you do a lovely personalized postcard, there's a lot that can be done with it, because there's your inbox is full, but your letterbox isn't, your mailbox isn't. So it's I think there's a lot to say for going old school again as well. So digital's fashion, but
yeah, I don't disagree. I think that you can do a mailing to a targeted population, targeted market, and you can target them on, let's say, social media, and then maybe do some blog posts on LinkedIn into the areas that they may be in. I think that it's definitely a cost-effective way, although mailings are expensive, but generally speaking, meaning depending on what you mail, okay? It could be a postcard, but if you do a huge mailing, but it's targeted, they're going to see it, because I agree, mail is down. So it's definitely they're gonna see the postcard because if it's a postcard, you're gonna flip it, you're gonna see it, you're gonna see your name, you're gonna see the company, they'll see it on LinkedIn, they'll see it in the email.
Exactly.
That whole brand building thing. So no, I get it. I think that we've covered a lot here for sure, and the website for Simon, sorry, is the thebrainwheel.com, correct?
That's right. That's right.
Thebrainwheel.com. Wheel like a bicycle wheel, thebrainwheel.com. It's Simon Lamey, the chief brain there, marketing consultancy, working with businesses to help them grow in Europe and London, and obviously in the U.S. Strategy, helping them to get to their customers. And what I'd like to do is go into our fast question, lightning round questions, and just to get a feel for some of the things that you like. So, do you like coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Hot or cold?
Hot.
Favorite food?
Pistachio nuts.
Wow. Okay, so it's not even like a meal. It's more like nuts. All right. That's okay. It's okay. Yeah, yeah. Where would you like to travel? If money was not an object, time is not an issue, where would you go?
Argentina.
Argentina. Okay, I'm sure there's a backstory to that. The hobbies. What do you like to do?
I like calisthenics or bodyweight exercises.
All right, so you're into the exercise thing. Good for you. Great. Biggest challenge that you see that businesses have with marketing? Consistent challenge across a lot of businesses.
Very simple. It's getting recognized for the work the great work they do. Right. So I'll need a little bit of explanation. It won't take too long. I know it's a one quick fire round, but the big thing I find is that you see small businesses, for example, doing great work, but they always customers go to their competitors instead. That's a revenue issue, but it also causes a lot of pride. And I can see that consistently. Small businesses do great stuff, but don't get the attention they deserve for their great work. So that's what I'm out to try and help small businesses solve. So yeah.
No, that's great. Great. Thanks for sharing. Hot dogs, ketchup or mustard?
Oh, can't decide. Oh man, I've got to have both. Can I say both? Yeah.
You like both? That's fine. What about a hamburger? Ketchup or mustard?
Oh man, ketchup, right? Unless you're in the States, where it's got to be ketchup with French's mustard. And then,
Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
Okay. And PC or Mac?
Mac.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be with the iPhone. It's going to be a Mac, right?
Yeah.
So, do you wear a watch or you just use your phone?
Phone.
Okay. That's it. Thanks so much for being with us, and it was a great interview. Thanks for sharing some of your insight and sharing some of your brain with us. I appreciate that. So you've been listening to the Sales Prospector Show. The interview has been with Simon Lamey at thebrainwheel.com. Look at the show notes. You're going to see a lot of marketing tips there, but also tools that you can go look at and read through some of the stuff that Simon shared with us. Simon, it's been great interviewing you, and thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks very much, Gil.
You're welcome. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.